Well, we are so excited to welcome Helen J Shen. Helen has a BFA in MT with a minor in MT composition, which we'll talk about, from the University of Michigan. They're only a few years out of school, the class of 2022, and have already done a lot of exciting work, including most recently starring in The Lonely Few at MCC Theater alongside friend of the pod, Lauren Patton, Teeth at Playwrights Horizons, and she's about to make her Broadway debut in a new musical. We love a new musical called Maybe Happy Ending opposite Darren Criss. And most importantly to our listeners, Helen is another of our fabulous MTCA alum who are out there crushing it in the real world. Helen, welcome on the pod. How are you feeling today?
Thank you so much. I'm feeling awesome. I had my first fitting today, so it feels really just feels really good to be here and talk to you about all of it.
It's really real when they put you in clothes. Then you're like, well, this is happening. Somebody sewed these, so this must really be real.
It was the muslin forms and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
so the actual piece hasn't been made yet, which actually oddly enough makes it feel even more real. It's like
So
it's will
customized.
be
This is
left down
just for me.
custom.
Yep. And you've already had you're on the beautiful billboard, and so this is happening. You're excited.
It's happening. It's happening.
Well, we are so excited to have you on today for so many reasons, but especially in terms of your recency in graduating. We talked about that. Our first few seasons of the pod, we had all these wonderful Broadway luminaries on, which was very exciting for me and I think for a lot of our listeners. But one of my big notes for myself was that, I've tried to correct this in the past few seasons, to have more young people on, right? Who could maybe speak a little more directly to what is current in both the academic environment. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, the professional world at this age, post COVID, you graduated, all the things that a lot of our students and listeners are going to be directly experiencing themselves. I mean, as great as it is to hear from Jesse Mueller or Gavin Creel, I do think their experiences are just a little different than what you've gone through. So
It's
I'm really
so
excited for
funny
that.
because the industry does change so fast, and so you're right about
So
that.
fast.
Yeah.
And it feels like maybe even accelerating a little bit in the post COVID world of just how the changes happened so quickly. And so we'll get into
Completely.
some of that. I did this a couple of months ago with Ali Louise Borsky, one of our wonderful alum who was playing Tommy at the time. But I'm going to take you through a rigorous rundown of your audition process. I want to talk about your college audition process, your college
Mhm.
experience, and then, of course, some of these early career experiences.
Cool.
Do you feel ready? You ready for the gauntlet? That's the
I'm
word I've
ready.
been looking for.
I'm ready. Hit
Gauntlet. Here
me.
it is. Okay. All right, Helen. So I'm going to start you off with the first question that everybody gets. It's a softball before it gets hard, which is just, do you remember 16, 17-year-old Helen, as you were starting to think about this process, what were you looking for in a theater school? So when you came to an MTCA, what were you thinking about of going, here's what I think I want a program to be?
I came to MTCA not knowing much about the college
Mm-hmm.
audition process. I had seen a couple of my friends go through it before. I had even helped my one friend do her pre-screens. I accompanied her because I played
Mm-hmm.
piano, and so I accompanied her and I watched her go through that process. But in terms of, I only knew the big names. I didn't really even know about Michigan. But all this to say, MTCA really, the system was to pick, same with any college process, was to pick target, reach, and safeties. But it feels a little bit different because it musical theater is more nebulous than like
Mm-hmm.
just your GPA and just numbers and things. So that was a new idea in my head, and just doing more research. So I was looking for a music, like I said, I have a piano
Right, you were already a
background. So I
piano
was
player.
looking
Yeah.
for, yeah, I was looking for an education that felt like it was well rounded, like I could be
Mm-hmm.
pushed, um, and just one that made me feel like I could really grow into my artistry. I just wanted there to feel like there was room to grow. That makes
Uh-huh. Did you have any big academic things in mind? Like Michigan, obviously a really good academic school as well. Was that somewhere on your list of going, I do kind of want this school to not just be BFA and artistic and
sense.
conservatory. I'm hoping for some liberal arts.
I think going into the process, I didn't know that that was something that I wanted. And then to visit different, it took me visiting the different programs and asking about it to realize, oh, they don't have as big of a academic uh, kind of world. And so I started to think about what it would feel like to be there for 4 years. And I went to public school. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
used to a more rigorous um, academic thing, but I also wasn't necessarily um, closed minded to the idea of a
Right.
conservatory.
If you'd ended up at a Juilliard or a Carnegie Mellon, you'd be like, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Totally. Do you remember kind of artistically, like when you first came to MTCA, do you remember like what you felt like you needed to work on? Obviously, already a skilled musician. Do you remember sort of where you were in the process of hearing me as a singer, actor, dancer? This is what I think I want to work on.
I definitely felt like, and I still feel like, dance is probably one that I feel the least strong at,
Mm-hmm.
simply because the people who that's their thing, I wasn't ever going to be a competition dancer
Sure.
magically in the blink of an eye.
Right.
And so, but I think what helped actually was having the piano background to understand context and understand 10 years of training and 10 years of
Uh-huh.
time. You can't really overnight just be like, oh, well, I'm a musician, I'm a dancer in that
Mm-hmm.
way. That is just years and years of dedication, and yeah, you can't replicate that kind of, just you can't replicate 10 years. You know?
Totally true. Totally true. Yeah. I love, I have the answers. I can check up on what did you say in your initial consultation with
Oh
us
my
this summer.
god.
I'm looking over this now. You talk about like a cohesion. I think you said you really were a strong singer already. You felt confident musically, but you wanted to incorporate all of your talents together. That was, I guess,
Mhm.
something that you had said of like, it's why I want to
So
come here
interesting. It's
somehow
so fascinating
blend
that you
them.
have these
Of
answers.
course. Like I'm looking back, I'm seeing what do you remember from 10 years ago or whatever it was. Not even 10 years ago though,
Mhm.
really. That was
Yeah.
2018, that's 6 years
Mhm.
ago.
Mhm.
6 years ago, you were sitting, again, this listeners hear that. 6 years ago, you were sitting in a summer initial consultation about to,
Mhm.
it's before your senior year. It wasn't so early, right? You're about to start your process. And then 6 years later, here you are about to put on that muslin and become a Broadway star. My gosh, so exciting. Do you remember a lot about the process itself? Do you remember the pre-screen, your
Mhm.
mock audition and unifieds and different? Do you remember sort of the stages of the process, or does it all blend together for you?
No, I remember training with Alex Fink and Rachel Stevens, my
Hmm.
coaches. Um,
Rachel
and
Stevens, a very recent podcast guest from CCM. She was
yeah,
just on the pod, now working at CCM. Yep.
the best, the best.
Yep.
And just like I hadn't, it was also, these coachings were in the city, and I remember just like
Hmm.
working my way into the New Jersey Transit. It all felt very real. And I remember
Hmm.
my first mock audition, I think it was the October mock or the November mock.
Oh, it was the November mock. Oh, don't worry,
Okay,
I've got it
there you
noted
go.
right here,
There
Helen.
you go. All the all the details. Yeah, I remember that felt like a band-aid being ripped off,
Yes.
and to have all of the things in theory prepped, but then to actually just go was something that I hadn't had that opportunity to do
Yep.
so before. I was super happy that there was a mock audition, and it was just kind of like, it's fine if you mess up, it's obviously a mock, but treat it as audition prep. And
Yes.
all of the, I remember the ordering of my auditions being something that I thought about, of like,
Uh-huh.
you don't want to only save, it was just a good balance of not wanting to save all of my reach top schools for the end. Like, I wanted it to feel like I was in the swing of things.
Right. You're talking about like the batting order of like how you lined up your scheduled auditions. So some
Yes,
warm up auditions,
yes,
some schools that matter, and then how those not all in one basket at one unified city, that kind of thing.
yes. And yeah,
Hmm.
and scheduling is also with still being in school. I was like, I only have so many weekends
Uh-huh.
to plan. And so I utilized New York Unifieds, MTCA. Through MTCA, I did my Baldwin Wallace audition. Like, I
Hmm.
made sure to have a couple of auditions in the beginning, like in October, November, that
Yep.
felt um, lower stakes, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then when I got my first acceptance in December, um, just before the actual thick of it in January,
Yep.
February, I felt already like, worst comes to worst,
Right.
I still go to musical theater school, and that's
Yep.
the best case scenario for me still.
Yep. It's both the safety of I have an in, but also like somebody can say yes to me. Like once
Yeah,
that happens, you're like, it's possible. Like it just makes you really believe when you're like, well, they said yes, maybe someone else will say yes. Who knows?
I genuinely had no idea. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, even though I did um, a couple musical theater programs growing up educationally, like, I didn't know what the response was going to be.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that first yes was like, oh, okay, let me keep going and see what's out there.
Yeah. Helen, you're really bringing me back with like, we talk about how the industry's changed, and I have some questions kind of as we get into that with your showcase and all this stuff
Mm-hmm.
professionally, but really how, MTCA has changed. And I think one of the ways that we try to we're trying to bring back some of what you successfully experienced in 2018 of like getting yourself into the city and showing up for your coachings, like, and taking them serious. I think even what you were able to do in your November mock, having already experienced some of those really like impactful coaching sessions, really just because everything now, so many students have Zoom now, and it just feels easy. And we'll talk about like, how does it feel like the event of your audition, of what it's going to be like at Unified on campus?
Mm.
It's hard to do through a screen, and we're doing this right now through a screen, but it's hard to sort of replicate that same thing.
It is interesting. I mean, that was all of junior year for college for me. Was I think it helps with on camera work. It helps with self taping because I would say 95% of my auditions are all self tapes,
For
and
sure.
so that is a skill. Like
Yep.
I don't think that it's something to kind of, yeah, it's not something to scoff at. It's a genuine. It's tough to hype yourself up. I'm a
Yep.
person. I'm a perfectionist. It's hard to put it down. It's hard to stop at take 3 or take 5. Like
Yep.
I have now made it a rule for myself with all my tapes that 3 is the max,
Yes.
and make
Yep.
sure that like you're ready to do it, so you're
Yep.
not just like, trying to figure it out in the moment, because that then it's not even as efficient as if you just like were like, I'm gonna take an hour to do this tape,
Yes.
3 takes, and there we go.
Yes. It's weird. How do you take all the best of the fact, that flexibility, and the best of what you can bring into it, but yeah, to still make it feel like this is an event and I'm showing up
Mhm.
for it, and it's not like, because also like with your life, you can't be like, well, I can do that 9,000 times. I could always do it. Not till 2 Wednesday. I could still do it again. It's like at some point you're like, that's not helping. You're
I
belaboring
think
it.
it's diminishing returns. Like
Yeah.
after the 7th, 8th take of belting,
Yep.
it's not gonna sound right, and you're gonna be tired. It's just not. Yeah.
Totally. All right, so let's give ourselves some notes. Let's start off with the positive. What do you think you did very well in the process? Obviously, you had great results, but is there something that you feel like, hey, I really did this, and if I went back and did it again, I would really try to repeat this thing that I nailed?
I think I did a good amount of homework. And then when I got to the different auditions, whether that was on site or in New York or at Unifieds or whatever, it was to let my gut just trust it.
Uh huh.
Um, that was something that, like, even though I had put a certain pedestal of schools that I really wanted to get into, actually, when I got there, if that wasn't how it felt to me in that moment, it didn't matter name, it didn't matter what accolades they wanted. I think something that was hard for me to do, but I think I did my best to do, was treat it like they were also auditioning for me.
Uh huh.
I
Uh huh.
I wanted to show up the best version of myself, but I also was like, they're not all going to be right.
Yep.
And to kind of take back that power a little bit,
For sure.
yeah, especially 17, you're not really sure where you stand in all this. You just know that you want to do it. You have all this passion. You don't know where to put it. To kind of feel like you were also seeing if they were the right fit
Yep.
shifted my mindset,
It's
so
so
that
smart.
it just
It's so smart.
made
I mean,
it
I talk
more
about it all the
fun.
time. Like, what is essentially happening is you, as a customer, are deciding where you're going to put down money. Now, of course, you want some people to let you put down money at their school. Of course, there's some of that. But it is, you almost wish you could take all that into your professional auditions, because that's not necessarily the case in a Broadway show, that you're the customer, right? In the same way. But really, that is, you knew after December you were going to school. And now it's just, which of my options am I going to go
Mhm.
explore? There really is as much you auditioning them as the reverse.
I
It's
think
really true.
that feeling also adds to the sense of confidence that you have. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
lets you breathe more. It lets you
Mm-hmm.
remember to be present more, because you're not so like, I just hope they like me. I just hope I
Yep.
can do the right thing so that, you know, yeah, it's so, obviously easier said than done, but I felt very much like I don't want to I don't want to be a chameleon to the point where I'm just changing myself just to
That's right.
be palatable to that other person.
Well, and it would have the adverse effect. If you are that, I'll do anything you want, just like me, then it's like, well, you're missing what this. I can't actually meet you, and so then you're missing the experience of what it
Correct.
actually is. I don't know if I want you or not. You haven't shown me you. You've shown me what you think I think you want. Like,
Yes.
yeah, that's so true. All right. Well, now that we've been nice to ourselves, what on the converse, what is there something that you would have done differently? If again, it went great, but if you were to go back and do it again, I don't recommend it.
Mm.
Is there anything you would say? hey, this time, Helen, focus a little less on this or focus a little more on this?
I think towards the end, there were a couple of auditions that I don't know, that I signed up for and then decided to cancel.
Mm.
I think towards the end, because I was trying to juggle still being in school and
Mm-hmm.
all the other parts of my life, I don't necessarily regret canceling them, but I think I could have been a little bit more intentional about shaping the entire thing so that it felt like I felt like I actually,
Uh-huh.
you know, intentionally did all of the ones that I signed up to do.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
No,
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
what.
Sometimes we talk about like running through the tape of it all. Like 'cause
Mhm.
after Unifieds, people often are like, "I'm just so exhausted. I don't want to do another John audition." And you go, "Once it's over, it's over." Really, there's only the pro. And so sometimes it's nice to go, "What? Let's just end on a bang. Let's have another great audition." Even if I know I'll probably go to this school over this school 90%, 95%, but to be able to go, I'm gonna finish it off and feel good about how I landed the plane.
Right. And I think that's just good practice for the professional world too. It's like
Yes,
when you sign up to do something, you should follow through.
totally.
Unless something like, you know, obviously listen to your body and listen to your, but that's why intentionally planning and trying to be as realistic as possible, not biting off more than you can chew as best you can. But if I was signed up to do something, to follow through.
I love it. Tell me a little bit of what was your family like at the time? So, what was your relationship with your parents in terms of were they
Mhm.
supportive financially, emotionally? How did that go in terms of the journey that you took
Yeah,
with the
they were
process?
super supportive financially, emotionally. They just had no idea. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that's exactly why MTCA was perfect for assuaging like the anxieties that they had, because there were questions that they asked that I had no idea the answers to, but like
Mm-hmm.
Leo does or
Mm-hmm.
Charlie does. Like I could kind of, it took the pressure off of me a little bit to have all of the answers.
Yep.
Um, and it felt like I was doing something active to get closer to my goal. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes with this industry, it's easy. Well, just it's much more nebulous. Like
Yep.
there's not always something to point to of like I'm
Yep.
working hard. I promise. Sometimes it's quiet. So I think with MTCA and with college auditions specifically, it was something that I was working towards. It was something that
Yep.
they were supporting me to do, and it was something tangible. I think that really helped.
Yeah, tangible is so true. There's not an SAT score that you go, well, okay, I've got this. I know at least I'm this. Like it's she's a really good singer. It's like, where does that live in the sort of nebulous, intangible world? I wonder. I mean, I do think a lot of people would be grateful for your parents' cluelessness and support because I think sometimes the parents who really feel like they know a lot, obviously, sometimes it can be very helpful to a family, and sometimes not so much. Sometimes like, Mom, I wish you knew a little less about
Yeah.
this process.
They
Uh,
my parents were really good about giving me space to
mm,
also like total props to them. They really leapt and trusted me a lot of the
mm-hmm.
process. And I understand wanting to like micromanage and wanting to be as helpful as possible. But sometimes the best thing to do is be like, I'm proud of you no matter what. Go do it.
Yep.
Go into the city and go try. Like that, I really was grateful for them giving me space to
Helen,
focus.
I'm trying to hear that note deep in my heart. As a dad of a 3-year-old now, I'm like, okay, do that. You have to. It's
Yeah,
harder, easier said than done to do that.
it's
To
so
give you space
hard.
to maybe fail and to not, even at the playground, I'm like, if she falls, it's okay. It's okay. If she falls, just let her climb.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick break, and on the back end, we're gonna dive into Michigan. So back in
Woohoo!
a flash. Okay, we're back with the great Helen J. Shen. We're going to talk a little bit about the Michigan experience. Of course, we've heard a lot about that darn school and Celia and Erica and Gavin and blah blah blah. But of course, we do want to hear about your experience. So, give me
Mhm.
what was the specific experience of those 4 years like for you? I mean, you mentioned junior year was COVID for you.
So I left sophomore year early in March to go home, and then that was I think 6 months at home, and then I moved back to Ann Arbor to take virtual classes. I felt
Yep.
like that was the best way for me to focus,
Yep.
and we all made do with what we had. But I took during the junior year um, online portion, I felt like dance class wasn't where I wanted to put my energy because I
Uh-huh.
just didn't feel comfortable going. Like, just personally, I just wasn't comfortable with that, and so I kind of that was the time that I shifted to getting a minor in musical theater
Yep.
composition, because at the time, I don't know, I had that music background. It seemed good. It ended up being the best part of my time there,
Yep.
because Professor Lynn Schenkel is absolutely a genius. And as an actor, I learned so much. As a writer, I have learned so much. And it's just, yeah, it was so unique. And it felt like even Professor Wagner was such a big proponent on writers and the craft and the history of it all. Like, it felt like coming out of Michigan, there's a reverence for the canon that I feel is really important and is a common thread through alum.
Totally agree. And I mean, not only with COVID though, but with the sort of leadership change at Michigan, like it was a pretty transitional time. I mean, how did you? Michael would have come in was that also your junior year?
His
No.
first full year was my senior year,
Yeah.
but he had come and done a concert called Broadway Our Way, sort of using the arrangements from his Broadway Inspirational Voices concerts. And then the next year, sophomore year, I had done another original piece of his called Sonnets, Soliloquies, and Soul. So we already felt such I mean my class of
Your class, yeah.
2022
Yep.
felt so just felt so connected to him, because our freshman year he had already taken us under his wing a little bit, and a lot of the people in Broadway Our Way were freshmen. And so when we became seniors and that was his first year, we felt in lockstep with him, and we were ready to usher in his program, like his ideas of the
His vision.
program.
Yeah. How does that? Yeah, I guess I mean, it happens so often. I mean, so many schools,
Mhm.
especially during COVID, there's so many people transitioning out. I guess, like, what is that student experience? Maybe you're specifically rooting for Michael as he's coming in,
Mhm.
but as you're seeing this sort of transition at the top, in some of the ways it's like, if as our presidents, here we are, this will be released, November's coming, and hopefully, well, no matter what, we're gonna have that transition.
Yep.
But sort of how does that affect you from a student perspective as you see a new vision? Michael was articulating a new and different vision. Then it's going to happen again as he left Michigan, that those students would feel, okay, well, what are we doing now? How do you feel that in terms of like your classes and your interaction with other
Mhm.
professors? What does that feel like from a school perspective as you see shifts like that?
I think for me personally, I felt like it was a good opportunity to step up. And I think going into college, like the way that hierarchies of school had happened before was student and
Mm-hmm.
teacher. And kind of when those transitional periods happened in college and just even in general, we're all adults here now, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of help each other. Like, I think I was expecting things to be handed to me or things to be easier, and to kind of have a more passive role. But actually, because of the transitional periods, I had to have more of an active role in my own education,
Yep.
which is totally such an asset to have post grad. Like,
Yes.
I feel like I have more of a front footed way of thinking about things. No one's looking for you. You have to
Yep.
go to that audition. You have to put yourself out there in a really like front footed way.
Mm.
And I think when I was in school, it was a harder transition, because it's like, well, okay, I'm paying for this education. Who's going to teach me?
Uh-huh.
Kind of thing. And that's all fine and dandy. But I actually think me looking for what I wanted to learn from the people that I knew could teach me those things the best has helped me the most post grad.
That's such a good lesson to pull from that. That's really smart. How did you feel in terms of, we mentioned at the beginning of what you thought you were looking for at 16, 17. How did you feel in terms of kind of the amount of what I'm going to use air quotes and say conservatory style training that you
Mm-hmm.
got, right? I know some people will use conservatory to mean different things, but, we would put Michigan more on that liberal arts end of the BFA in terms of you have more opportunity for academic classes, that minor in MT composition you talked about. How did you feel in terms of, did it feel like the right amount of focus on acting, singing, dancing for you, and how much control you had of that? Did that feel right? Did you ever think, oh, I kind of want even a little bit more of a conservatory style, less academics? Did you ever want more academics? How did that feel in terms of your fit?
I think at Michigan, if you have a very specific idea of what you want to do, the world is your oyster. Like
Mm-hmm.
the way that the programs are structured as a given is a little bit more rigid, but there is room for play. There's room for students to take a semester abroad. There's room for like time off. There's room for a lot of flexibility in that way. And so that's why I think for me at Michigan, because there was that space for fill your own, like, choose your own adventure kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
Then I took a creating original theater class through the acting department. I took like producing classes. I took, musical theater composition classes. I was able to kind of do different things. And I felt like that only added to my time in the actual like performance classes that were mandatory for that. I
Yep.
just think that because I felt like I could go take, classes with the smartest people that I could possibly, the people who I was living in my freshman dorm, I could learn so much about other things, and
Mm-hmm.
ended up collaborating with jazz majors. Like it just ended up being like it's about being surrounded by people who can push you, and
Mm-hmm.
I found that tenfold at Michigan.
That's so cool. And do you feel like you have a sense of the hyphens that may spring from that for you? I saw you did some music direction. That seems like that maybe. Are you thinking about composing? It's something you're already doing, or what kind of hyphens beyond actor do you see yourself sort of embracing there?
I totally see writer. I see producer. I mean, a person that I really look up to is Sarah Bareilles because she just doesn't seem to have a job title. She
Mm-hmm.
kind of does what she's passionate about. And I felt like not in that way, but I felt a little bit in the own Michigan microcosm, like just continue choosing classes and choosing activities and choosing projects, student works that you feel passionate about, and then you'll land where you're meant to.
Mm.
Um, like I just have some I don't even know the things that I'm going to want to do 10 to 15 years from now, and I'm so excited to find those out.
I love it. Talk about speed of change, in terms of the industry. I
Mm.
feel like you're describing almost post hyphen. Like we were just embracing the hyphens. We just finally were like, okay, actor, writer. This is amazing. We're all these things. Now you're like, don't even give me a hyphen.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
all
label
the
me.
hyphens. Don't label me. I could be this or this or this. I love
Exactly.
it. I'm going to hopefully not traumatize you. I think probably was a good experience, but tell me a little bit about your showcase experience. So I want to hear kind of the lead up to it in terms of what was your preparation, then what was the reception, and how has that kind of launched you into the early career success you've had?
It is so easy to put showcase on the highest pedestal because it
Literally, it's a
feels like
showcase.
it
Here you are
truly is.
in glass. Yeah.
Exactly. And for 4 years, it's what you're leading up to.
Hmm.
Um, but it also, I think, put a lot of pressure on all of us, especially being the first one that was back in person post COVID.
Hmm.
It felt, and knowing that a lot of my, now hearing back, a lot of my agent and manager friends being like, we just couldn't even look at the class of 2020 and
I know.
2021. Like that, knowing that and how heartbreaking and how difficult it was and still is to just recover from that timing
Hmm.
debacle, it was a lot to shoulder. Um, and I think it's just an interesting, weird difference in you're there for 4 years and you're having the same exact experience with these 20 people for 3.5 years. And then suddenly the second half of the last year, you're watching people leave, or you're watching
Hmm.
people get agents, or you're watching people not get agents. And it
Hmm.
puts a weird strain on the family that you've built. But I think, yeah, I think that's just part of it a little bit. And the the people who can kind of, I don't know, it's just, I think it's difficult. It's a hard
Hmm.
time. It was really easy for all of us to keep looking sideways and to feel like a quote unquote bad showcase result means the end of your career, even though
Hmm.
we're all so young. Like
Hmm.
it's easy to put narratives in that way. And I just, maybe it's me coming from a time where like my showcase results were pretty good. I felt really good about what happened after showcase, but like it really doesn't mean anything. Like it's a great launch pad. You're able to get in front of so many people, and that's a great opportunity. but a bad showcase does not mean failure, and a good showcase does
Mm-hmm.
not mean success.
Yep. I mean, it's like in some of the same ways, though it's a different experience in the college audition. In the same ways, I think people tell themselves false narratives about what showcase is. Like, what is the event that's happening? I think people get it as wrong as they do the college auditions, where they think my college audition means, am I good or not? It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what's happening.
No.
That's not the experience of this event that is occurring. I think it happens to showcase too. But if you don't mind giving, I know you probably don't want to brag about yourself, but as much specifics as you want to, in terms of, you don't have to give me every single result or anything. But do you remember like how did you think about what you chose to sing, or how you chose to present yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How were you thinking about, like, even some, I wouldn't mind hearing some of the, like, we've had a number of conversations about type or brand, or, is that how are those conversations happening in school? And then how do those kind of manifest into the showcase? And then I even love to hear a little bit like, and how did that land on agents and managers if you had those discussions? Like, what were you thinking about? Here's how I want to show myself.
Yeah, I think it helped me in the beginning to think about shows that are currently on Broadway that I could go into.
Mm-hmm.
That helped me kind of narrow, like, what kind of genre should I even go to? You're distilling you're distilling 22 years of your life
Yep.
into 90 seconds.
Yep.
And what is the best 90 seconds to do that? It weirdly is even more wild of a choice than picking what your college audition songs are going to be. Like, at least you had two choices or three choice,
Right.
you had more. And though some schools do have more choices, but with Michigan it was one song, and you could either do a song by yourself, you could either do a song with a partner or a group even,
Mm-hmm.
or like if you wanted to dance, like it was all sorts of things. I think I knew already that I really loved the contemporary musical theater world. I knew that I would either go for a pop song or a
Mm-hmm.
contemporary musical theater song. I ended up choosing a song that was by Lynn Schenkel, so it felt really just like
Mm-hmm.
full circle to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I had a really great time working with her and working on it. And I think something that my now manager has said post is like, what I really loved about your showcase piece was that I watched you tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, even, I'm sure the notes of what I said at 17 reflect this, but I didn't care about story at all when I was growing up. I was like, as long as I sing good, that
Mm-hmm.
is a good performance to me. But
Mm-hmm.
through Michigan and through just like growing up, I guess, um, above all, you need to tell the story, and you need to do things that are character driven, because that's what musical theater is, as opposed
Yep.
to being a recording artist or
Yep.
something else. Like, that is what our job as actors is. So yeah, I think that was something that I didn't know was going to help me as much as it did, was to pick a song that I felt like I could tell a story through, and you could see how I felt about the words,
Yep.
that also showcase, vocal. But honestly, more importantly, it's about telling a story.
Yep. And how much of those, did you have a lot of in that showcase class, or the sort of preparation for showcase class? Did you have a lot of conversations about sort of how you were going to process yourself, meaning how you're going to market yourself to the world? And then how did those land on those agent manager conversations as you're sitting? Were they saying, "Hey, here's how I see you in these shows," and was that lining up with what you thought, or like how did you do, I guess, at the processing, the expectation of, this is how I think they'll see me?
I think that's all. You don't really know until you're in it, which is why I think something that ties into this conversation is that I had already self-submitted to a Tara Rubin project.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had, without an agent, without a manager, was already being sent like some tapes and stuff. And so I was already like dipping my toe into
Mm-hmm.
self-taping and auditions and stuff. And so I already knew sort of what was hitting. Like, I
Uh-huh.
was getting callbacks for more of the pop rock kind of things.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I think we all kind of didn't understand how to answer these questions about brand, because um, yeah, I think, well, it's interesting because like some people read really young, and there's just like certain roles that like if you read young, you'll be doing da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens to the students who are like, I can't wait to grow into my Brian Darcy James roles. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
wait to do that. It felt a little bit. It can feel skewed because like sometimes the timelines, because they are so vastly different for different types of characters, it can feel like you're not making it in the industry if you're
Yep.
not immediately doing those things. So I'm short, I'm 5'1", and I have like a pop rocky voice. So
Yep.
those ones felt like things that I could, goalposts that I could shoot for, that felt attainable. And I was also getting good feedback from. So I think that's what gave me a little bit of direction.
Yep.
Um, and I think that a part of it is luck. Like,
For
I
sure.
don't know.
For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, did you? I noticed on the website. I forget exactly how you put it. You said something like, I had a punk phase and I never grew out of it, or something like that, right? Like, did that? And that feels kind of how the industry was then willing to meet you, of,
Mhm.
a lonely few kind of world that you're going to fit into. I mean, some of that you may already kind of be saying by saying pop, more the pop musical theater than being in the Music Man or something like that. But
Mhm.
was the is that something that you, as you're thinking, hey, I'm going to put that out into the world, are you thinking, hey, that's going to be attractive to other people? Or are you just saying, hey, that's really authentic to who I am, and I'm just going to lead with my authentic self and see what happens? Like, how much are you calculating or thinking? Processing is really what I mean there. In terms of how much are you processing for the sake of casting directors and going, here's a good place for me, or are you going like, hey, this is me, I hope you can find a place to fit me?
Sure. I think those are those were the shows that resonated with me the most, was like more pop punky rock shows, like ones that felt more on like the Rent side of things, or like
Mm-hmm.
the, yeah. So but this is something to unpack for myself too, is like, why didn't I think that I could be right for these golden age musicals? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is representation. A lot of that is like, I wanted to do, I didn't want like to feel like I wasn't welcome in a genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that that was still something that I work through today, and still am so excited to like help change and help work
Mm-hmm.
towards like broadening what the idea of a golden age lead would look like or sound
Yep.
like or anything. But I do think that those kinds of shows that I like, the punk vibe of it all, were the ones that resonated with me the most, and I
Mm-hmm.
happened to enjoy embodying those characters the most, and just had more fun doing those auditions and doing those materials and stuff. And I think I
Yep.
just leaned into that.
I love it. I mean, yeah, one of my questions I had down. I mean, I do think it's something the industry is currently struggling with. Is like, how do we think about personal identity and how it
Mhm.
fits with type and brand and all these things? Because it's like the industry is changing, and hopefully we are changing it, and really you guys are changing it more than my generation, but like in a beautiful way. And the industry's trying to catch up and it's trying to figure it out. But there's still the industry that was and the industry that will be. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. How do you, personally, and some of this is something we do with our MTCA students to some extent early on at the beginning of this process, kind of self discovery. Like, how do you feel like, college helps you or helped you kind of click into some of that embracing of who you were? Like, how did you, we met you, you didn't have red hair, and then you have red hair on your website or whatever. It's like, what made you go, this is me and this is how I'm going to step into this person? And then maybe, and now we're back and we don't have red hair. So it's like, how do you think of
Yeah,
that journey for yourself as like, of what you're experiencing and maybe what college adds to that conversation?
I think it's a safe place to incubate and take risks and make mistakes. Like, I feel like you can only learn about yourself trying different things. At least for me, I'm like always trying to push my own boundaries and kind of continue asking, like, is this my most authentic self? And
Mm-hmm.
there were certainly some growing pain times in school, in college, but I think that's just your late teens into your early 20s. That time is for trying things, and that
Mm-hmm.
time is for not knowing and being okay with not knowing. And yeah, I think that time was really important, just to like feel all the growing pains and just move through them.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't think there was any class or any other thing that I could have done to do what was right for me to like get where I am today. I just had to like, I was feeling like I wanted to dye my hair red and kind of a little bit damn the man of like, if this is not marketable or correct, actually fine. And I think, yeah, I think like trying to find the things that you can point to be like, if you dye your hair, you're gonna feel more this, like all of those things I just had to like follow my instincts and follow my gut to do.
Yep. It's so interesting. I mean, this is now many years of therapy that we're all going to have to go through to figure it out. But it's like, it's interesting, but like, who are you in conversation with as you ask those questions, in terms of being like, maybe this is me. And I think it's people really crave, I think a lot of young artists crave, I'm red hair person. I'm this, I got it. Like that's, and it just feels like it's an ever moving target too. Cause then you're like, well, maybe in that moment that's right for me. And maybe that's not who I am next year. And some of those things I think are really, it's hard. It's hard as an artist to sort of, you want there to be a black and white answer. And often it's not as simple as I'm just this or just this, but I'm also this. We're all these multifaceted people.
And knowing that most likely you will change. I think that was something that like, oh, if I dye my hair, do I have to keep dyeing my hair forever? Like,
and then that's how they know me. And in my headshots, I'm always that way. Yeah.
But again, that's like that sense of like, I'm going to do exactly what they want me to do so that I get this job, is like, you can't live life thinking that.
It's so true. The only constant is change. All right. Well, we're going to take a break and talk about this exciting change that's about to come up in your career. So we're back in a flash. All right, we are back flashingly in a just with utter rapidity. We're back with Helen J Shen, and we're going to talk about this wonderful debut that's coming. Everybody loves a Broadway audition debut story. Here's my obligatory. Tell me about the booking. So, what was the audition process? Any good story with the landing the role?
Yes. So I think is a great story. So I was in the process of doing shows for Teeth the musical and at the same time doing rehearsals for The Lonely Few. They overlapped. I was doing double duty for a little bit. So I was scheduling all these things. I got a tape, you tape and you expect not to hear anything back because that's how you protect yourself.
And probably the numerical reality most of the time. That's what happens.
Exactly. When have I ever booked from a tape? When has the odds of those things are like, anyway. So I just taped, got the callback. Great. The callback is a chemistry read with Darren Criss. I'm like, okay, don't freak out. It's gonna be what it is. I get there and it goes really well. I'm trying not to like let it get to my head. I'm just letting it go because still, even if it went as good as it possibly could have, maybe I'm an inch too tall or too short, or all of these things that are out of my control. So completely let it go. I also at the time in Teeth was covering the lead called Dawn. And so this was flash forward to a Wednesday, and we had 2 shows on Wednesday, and I get a text that says you're going on for the matinee. And I'm in rehearsals for The Lonely Few, and I'm like, okay, I haven't ever done this before. All I had was a sort of put in, and I can't really focus. And I asked to leave rehearsal early because I was just like, knowing me, I won't be useful. Give me the notes tomorrow. Thank you very much. I run to the theater and I'm doing I do the show. I kind of black out. This is like the highlight of my entire day already. I get another text. You're going to do the evening show as well. Okay, great. I'm doing the evening show and it goes like perfect. All of my friends are there. Like everything is just, it feels like your wedding night. There's no other feeling to describe like how people come around you to buoy you, to support you when you go on for a role that you cover. Like that part of understudying is actually electric and intoxicating. And it's the most amazing way that theater people come together to help things happen. And so I'm celebrating the fact that I did 2 shows for my Dawn premiere and everything. And my manager calls me over and he goes, let's take a picture at the step and repeat. And they go, say you're making your Broadway debut in the fall. And I was literally in front of the 7 repeat, staring at a row of my best friends in the world, my agent, my manager are next to me, and they're all like, it's happening. Like, it was slow motion. It was so crazy. Also, to point this out, Michael Arden, who's directing Maybe Happy Ending, wasn't in the room for the chemistry read. It was just he had work in Atlanta and was like they were taping it for him and was gonna watch it later. So I hadn't even met Michael Arden at this point. And they tell me that I have the role, and that night I get a call from Michael that was like, your audition was amazing, your chemistry, like, we're so excited to do this. And just knowing the day that I had, I was like, I actually don't have the capacity to process anymore.
That's too full. That's too much. It's too much. It's just a Wednesday. It's just one Wednesday.
I woke up this morning thinking I was just going to go to rehearsal and my shows, and that's it. And
it's exciting enough.
Woke up on Thursday, having my Broadway debut down the line, and it was amazing. It was a really quick process too. Like, I had been developing teeth for a little bit, developing The Lonely Few. Like, all of these things are in the industry. You kind of are like, I mean, one hopes that it'll go to Broadway, or one hopes that it'll keep going and stuff. So I knew that there were things that I was already planting seeds about.
Right.
But this one came in, tape, callback, roll.
So often it's that. It's a chance of a chance of a chance of maybe if they get a theater, and now you're like, and this was 2 auditions, a self-tape and 1 audition.
Yep.
Wow. Helen, that's amazing. That is, you're gonna remember that for the rest of your life. That's like a forever, like, you're gonna see those faces at the 7 repeat and have that feeling, that visceral feeling. That's so cool. Tell for audience members who don't know what a chemistry read is. What is a chemistry read, as it might differ from an audition?
Normally, when you have a final callback, it's just you yourself doing the material that you've been given, probably from the show. They'll probably tape it, but this one, the creative team already knew that Darren Criss was going to be attached. So
he was not auditioning with you.
Yeah,
he was in. Yeah,
Darren was singing with me, and it's whether or not the person singing with him was going to be right.
And what is there a difference in the way that you kind of approach it? I think of a normal audition with someone's behind the table and there's a reader and it's spotlight on you. Did it feel different, or do you do anything different in terms of the way you approach it, knowing, hey, it's 2 actors collaborating and we're trying to feel if we feel good together? Was there any difference in your approach?
I think going into it, well, I'll say that all auditions feel pretty much different always, because it's just a different chemistry of people in the room, not even someone that you have to collaborate with, but just the projects are different. Like, everything, you just kind of have to be open and just receptive to the vibes, I guess. But with this one particularly, they made sure that I felt like it was very much a work in progress. And I love when auditions feel like the beginning of a work session. Like, I love being given notes. I love when they want to see how I work in the room, because that's something that we always think that the audition, or we get an audition for something, and you're like, this is your opening and closing night of blank on Broadway. That sometimes helps me just be like, I get to sing this material. I get to play this part, even if it's just in this Ripley Greer room, like, and I never get to do it again. Right now, this is what my take would be. Because then I feel like that's in my control. And then whether or not they want that take is up to them. And I feel like I've left everything that I can on the table. So,
but to your point, maybe a little artistically unhelpful to think of it like closing night, because you don't need to be at that place. And in fact, that's not where it will be. You want, if you're this director there, you want them to be able to go, plus me, plus I'd add this in, and plus the 2 of you together, and what would we discover? So in some ways, it's like it needs to be lived in, but hopefully raw enough that there is still room to grow to opening night, because there's a lot of changes, and especially a new musical, they know you're gonna. It's not like it's set and done and everything. We know exactly how it works yet.
This is why I'm always a proponent of holding your sheet, or like holding the pages.
Sing it. Sing
like,
about it.
You don't need to be like, it's not a performance. And even if you're not, I mean, the goal is to not look at it so you can connect with your scene partner, even if that's the reader. But holding it already sends a message that this is work in progress, that this is not where I will end up. Because a lot of, like, process is 90%, that's the whole job, is the process. you're not getting paid yet. You
That's
know?
so true. Well, and it leaves that just also a reminder for yourself of like, I have the capacity to listen. I don't have to be just play
Mm-hmm.
the tape on what I practice. There's a chance maybe he'll really throw me and I'll have to look down. Okay, that's happened. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm really listening to what's in front of me, great. I can read and react a little bit more to know it is that rehearsal
Yeah.
and not performance. It's so true.
Yes.
Are there things you're doing in your life other than this podcast to prepare you for the ways in which your life is changing, right? You're about to be Broadway's Helen J Shen, and that really doesn't go away, right? That's a forever label that you get. I know we're not labeling you. There's no labels, no hyphens, but you're going to be Broadway's. That's how
Yes.
you're going to advertise
Yes.
yourself. Have you thought about like, my life's going to be different a month from now
Mhm.
than it is now, and what you're doing to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think the best things to do, whether or not it's Broadway or whatever, I think for me, when I know that I have a contract coming up, I try to set myself up with routines that
Mm-hmm.
help me um, just set me up for the best version of myself. Like having a sustainable enough exercise regime that I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I can do even when I really don't want to do it.
If you don't
And
mind sharing, do you want to get specific? What does that look like for Helen?
Pilates.
Pilates, okay? In that like a morning Pilates, like are you trying to fix like
Yeah.
here's the time I would do before rehearsal, an 8 a.m. before a 10 p.m. rehearsal, that kind of thing.
Probably a 10:30. Like
Oh.
something that I think trying to go, yeah, bite off more than you can chew or like be too ambitious actually doesn't set yourself up. I've done it before.
Mm-hmm.
I've been like, I'm gonna be an 8 a.m. wake up, I'm gonna whatever this, and it just isn't sustainable because life happens and you want to also be able to enjoy your life. So
Mm-hmm.
I think Pilates has been the thing that I've been loving recently that
Mm.
makes me feel like even when I'm like dragging myself there, I feel like at least I know I took a class and I
Yep.
got through the class and
Yep.
I could sit on the couch the rest of the day and still feel like I did a good job.
Yep.
But yeah, I think finding little ways that you can kind of show up for yourself is sustainable self-care to me instead of
Yep.
just like going balls to the wall one way and then like the other way. I think it's trying to find that balance.
Yep.
And setting myself up with realistic expectations. I think it's easy to be like, well, once Broadway comes, I'm gonna be famous or I'm
Yep.
gonna be like super happy all the time. And it
You might be famous. That's more realistic than happy all the time.
right,
Let's be clear. Yeah.
right. So I think like and just the nature of doing theater, it's going to be difficult. Like eight
Mm-hmm.
shows a week for anything is
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel very fortunate that I've been able to have experiences before that I know that this will not be an easy undertaking. So I know I'm already going into it knowing that it will be a challenge and knowing that I will get sick and knowing that I
Yep.
will have to lean on people and lean on
Yep.
other, that will happen. So I think, yeah, just trying to keep my expectations level headed
Yep.
and yeah, just
What about in terms of, is there any other artistic prep? I mean, other than getting absolutely
oh, yeah.
jacked from those Pilates, is there anything you're doing vocally, physically, or just in terms of like literally the work of the book? And how are you trying to think day one of rehearsal, I'm going to try to be here?
I they will send a script and I try to like read the script a couple of times, go into it with my own ideas of the character. But honestly, we're probably going to do a first read through. I think once we dive in, it's about finding the alchemy of the people and the collaborators that we get to work with. So in that way, I want to be flexible and open. But
Mm-hmm.
once we're there, it's about trying to get off book as soon as possible. Is trying to offer things and follow my own acting instincts and my
Mm-hmm.
own character's instincts. Um, and trying to make it so there's a more shorthand, more I just don't want to feel I am aware that it's gonna be really easy for me to get intimidated by working with Michael Arden,
Yeah.
working with Darren. Like it's gonna be
Yes.
that will be something that was in the back of my mind of like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
So I think like knowing that when I have questions or if I have offerings, like obviously knowing time and place is good and knowing like
Yep.
ways of approaching those things, but not being afraid to offer my own artistry just because I feel like I'm new on the scene.
Absolutely. Well, and maybe it speaks to the confidence of a young woman who's able to say, "Hey, I'm auditioning you as much as you're auditioning me at 17."
Yeah.
But that's so true. I mean, you may not have the exact same status in the industry as Darren, but
Mm-hmm.
in the room, you need to have as much weight and be equal collaborators. It
Mhm.
doesn't help to shrink and say, well, you've been on Glee. I'm just out
Right.
of Michigan. I don't know.
Right.
That's not helping you, right? You need
Yeah.
to be able to be a collaborator and an artist. Yeah. Is there stuff that you're thinking about, and you can share only what you want to share in terms of conversations with management or representation of different ways? Like, are you thinking about ways that you're trying to kind of capitalize on career momentum in terms of, okay, so this is happening and now I've got to make sure I keep this going and I try to, get on this magazine. I got to go to this place. Like, is there those conversations you're having with press and, sort of how you can manage the juice that you're about to have?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, of course. I think that's like a natural is my I'm glad to lean on my team to think a little bit more coldly isn't the word, but like a little bit more like let's try to be more ambitious and try to keep doing like that
Yeah.
is I trust that that's what like my publicist and my agent and my manager that's what they're doing and that's
Mm-hmm.
why I've hired them and that's why they're on my team to move this forward. But I do think like as an artist I'm just moving forward just trying to continue to do things that inspire me. I do think that when you get to a certain like right now my name is literally in lights above the marquee and
Yep. Yep.
one doesn't want to the idea of it you don't want to like go back into step backward in that way, but also that means that I can't say yes to jobs that might make me
Yeah.
money in that certain way. So there is a little bit of a weird balance that you have to get through in this weird like limbo time because you're not you're at a different level than you were, but
Yep.
like that it's not all it doesn't mean that all of you're gonna get every role that you audition for. Like it also means that you can audition for the same things that you
Uh,
could have once.
ain't that the
Same with like
truth?
joining equity, you know what I mean? Like
That's
it's
right.
it's that give and take.
Right. We and the old phrase is like we all get promoted to the place where we're incompetent or whatever. It's like at some point you go now if I can only take Broadway lead jobs, like how many jobs are there that are Broadway
Exactly.
leads? I mean
Exactly.
that my wife had that experience of going, oh, now I've been Tony nominated, so now I can't take these jobs that I wanted to take, but I also want to make art and I want to do this job and they're going to pay me money and I can't take that.
Right.
That's really that's a conversation for future Helen to have to worry
Correct.
about a little bit.
Yes.
What about have you had conversations about stuff like social media and your public perception? I mean, you mentioned you're in names and lights there, but right now we only have 6,000 Instagram followers. I imagine that will not be true in October and November, where people listening in 2025 are going to see it's just a more public version of yourself, right?
Mhm.
Is that something that you think about in terms of how you put yourself out there into the world?
I certainly think that having more platform comes more responsibility, and I'm excited to utilize that, and also by utilizing that, maybe be more sparing with posting and stuff. But
Mm,
something that I think just social media in that whole way can really warp a lot of perceptions of like
mm,
what's actually going on. My boyfriend Andrew Barth Feldman went through like a very similar sort of rocket launch when he was
mm-hmm,
16, and
mm-hmm.
I thankfully am not 16 and I have a bit of more like developed frontal lobe than I'm lucky that that is something that I can have, but I also know that I'm in the grand scheme of things very young, and so I think that's something that I know I would like to have people who I trust to kind of hold me accountable in those ways. I just think like
Mm-hmm.
it'll probably get very overwhelming with commenters, and then with just a lot of opinions about people. And I don't think our brains are wired to comprehend the amount of opinions that social media gives us access to.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Helen, the aggregators now are about to take. Helen says she has bigger frontal lobe than Andrew. That's what the takeaway from this episode is basically saying you're bragging about your own frontal lobe. That's so true.
Probably
But
say
yes,
the same thing.
potentially helpful that you've seen that experience. I mean, because any Broadway lead experience is a rarity. I mean, even for those rare people who do it 8, 9 times, so
Mhm.
like most of your life, that's not the moment you're experiencing. So it is in the ups and downs of it all. But, you know, a first big up like this is hopefully one of many, but very exciting sort of wave to ride.
Yeah.
If you feel like, and I would imagine these 2 years have kind of felt like a slam dunk in terms of this is about all you could want from, I just graduated from school and here I am 2 years later. Do you have any sort of specific hopes for yourself for the next 2 years or the next 5 years? Or do you have a vision of kind of what, you know, the rest of the 2020s look like for you?
I hope the impact of maybe Happy Ending is an overall positive one on the industry, on like, I hope the people who see it, I hope it touches them. And then I hope to continue to make art that I would like to consume, and collaborate with the people. I've made so many wonderful connections through working on the musicals and just working as an actor that I have, and to what a joy it would be to work with them again and continue to meet people. Something that's I love about being an actor is that even in a 29-hour reading where you only meet somebody for Monday through Friday, those are still people in your address book if you want them to be. You know, the reason why we say the theater industry is so small is because if you want to, you can make friends with as many people as you want. And I think I'm hoping to work and collaborate with people who inspire me. That's the next chapter, I think.
Beautifully said. Okay, let's wrap. My last question, just to give a little advice. You've already given some great advice throughout this process, but if you're picturing a 17-year-old out there who is desperate to live the life, to be Helen J Shen, what advice would we have for that young person?
Be you. Like I think when I was looking at the question is always like, whose career do you feel like you would love to emulate? And I had all sorts of answers about people that I looked up to, and my journey, the way that it's playing out, doesn't look like theirs, but I wouldn't trade it. And I think like continuing to try to be as true to you as possible. There's room for new people. There's not necessarily room for second Philippa Sue's. There's not necessarily room for those. You will always fall short to the people who you can't emulate that. You know, you have to just be the best version of yourself. And I know that's cliche, but it really is true. Like, just continue asking, am I being as authentic as I possibly can? And striving for that.
Cliche for a reason. Okay, so we know if people want to find you, they can find you at Helen J Shen. Anything else we got to plug in terms of other stuff that people got to know? We got to go see maybe Happy Ending, I'm guessing.
Yeah, maybe Happy Ending. That's really it.
It's enough. It's enough for one moment in your life for sure. Helen, thanks so much for being on the pod. We truly, deeply appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. So fun.